In this gripping documentary episode, viewers are drawn into the chilling case of a femboy stepson, whose untimely death shakes her tight-knit community to its core. As investigators delve into the murder, they expose a tangled web of secrets that enveloped a seemingly normal family. San Francisco, California, the Davis family presents an image of suburban bliss. Claire Davis, a resilient and fiercely protective mother in her early 40s, juggles a demanding career as a social worker while trying to keep her family together. With a radiant smile and an undeniable warmth, she appears to be the perfect mother, devoted to her son. Jamie, an 18-year-old femboy who embraces his identity with confidence and flair. Jamie stands out in any crowd, with his smooth white skin and a delicate frame that blurs the lines of gender norms, complementing his bold choice of clothing. Fitted pants and oversized graphic tees adorned with eye-catching designs. Jamie often experiments with makeup, his big eyes framed with thick eyeliner and shimmering eyeshadows that reflect his playful personality. Despite his vibrant exterior, Jamie feels a growing isolation in a world that often struggles to accept him. Richard, Claire's new husband, is a tall, imposing figure in his mid-40s, with a deep voice and an authoritative presence that commands attention. He has built a successful career as a local contractor, earning respect in the community for his hard work. However, beneath his polished exterior lies a darker side, a growing obsession with Jamie that he tries to keep hidden from Claire. One evening, while Claire is away for a business trip, Richard seizes the opportunity to bond with Jamie over a late-night dinner. They sit together in the dimly lit dining room, and as they eat, Richard leans in closer, his gaze lingering on Jamie's features a moment too long. "You know, you're really something special, Jamie," he says, his voice low and gravelly. Jamie, feeling uncomfortable, chuckles nervously. "Thanks, Richard. I just try to be myself." Richard's hand brushes against Jamie's as he reaches for the salt. Jamie feels a jolt of surprise at the unexpected touch, an unsettling warmth flooding through him. He tries to ignore it, but Richard's lingering gaze sends a shiver down his spine. The atmosphere thickens, and the air feels charged with unspoken tension. As dinner continues, Richard's compliments become increasingly intense. "You've grown into such a beautiful young man," he says, his eyes locking onto Jamie's, searching for a response. Jamie shifts uncomfortably in his seat, sensing the line between admiration and something more sinister blurring. "Thanks, I guess. I just like to express myself," Jamie replies, attempting to downplay the awkwardness. Richard leans in further, his hand brushing against Jamie's knee. "You know, Jamie, it's not just about how you look. It's about who you are inside." His voice drops to a whisper, sending another wave of unease through Jamie. "I really appreciate your uniqueness." Startled, Jamie pulls back slightly, the distance between them suddenly feeling critical. "I appreciate that, Richard, but let's not make this weird, okay?" he says, trying to maintain a light-hearted tone. Richard's expression darkens, the shift in mood palpable. "Weird? Why would it be weird? I just think you're amazing." He reaches out, fingers grazing Jamie's thigh, a gesture that sends Jamie's heart racing in panic. "You shouldn't hide who you are, not from me." With a mixture of fear and anger, Jamie stands abruptly, knocking over his chair. "I'm going to my room," he declares, rushing away from the table, his heart pounding in his chest. He slams the door behind him, leaning against it, desperate to shake off the unsettling feeling that Richard's words and touch have left. Alone in his room, Jamie's thoughts spiral. He feels violated, trapped between a desire for acceptance and the harsh reality of his stepfather's obsession. The boundary between familial affection and something darker has been crossed, and Jamie feels powerless to confront it. Outside, Richard stares at the closed door, his face a mask of frustration and longing. He grapples with his feelings, torn between his affection for Jamie and the growing darkness that accompanies it. "You'll understand one day," he murmurs to himself, believing that his intentions, however twisted, are rooted in love. As days pass, the tension escalates. Jamie tries to avoid Richard, but he finds himself cornered more often than not. Richard's attempts to engage him become more brazen, filled with innuendos and lingering touches that make Jamie's skin crawl. One afternoon, while watching television in the living room, Richard sits too close, his arm brushing against Jamie's. The closeness feels suffocating, and Jamie shifts uncomfortably, trying to create distance. "Relax, Jamie. You're safe here," Richard says, his tone soothing yet charged with an undercurrent of menace. Jamie forces a smile, but inside he's screaming for help. He desperately wants to confide in his mother but fears the consequences. Would she believe him? Would she see Richard for what he truly is? The situation spirals further out of control when, during a private moment, Richard leans in and attempts to kiss Jamie. "Don't fight this, Jamie. We could be so good together," he whispers, his breath hot against Jamie's face. Startled, Jamie recoils, the shock of the moment sending adrenaline coursing through his veins. "No! Get away from me!" he shouts, pushing Richard away with all his strength. Richard's face darkens, frustration boiling over into rage. "You don't understand what's at stake here," he growls, eyes flashing with a wild intensity. Jamie's heart races as he realizes the depth of Richard's obsession. He darts from the room, adrenaline propelling him to safety, but the weight of what just happened lingers like a dark cloud. That night, Jamie lies awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart racing and mind racing even faster. The chilling realization sets in. He is not just dealing with a confused stepfather. He is trapped in a web of manipulation and control. As he wrestles with fear and anxiety, he vows to find a way out of this nightmare, no matter the cost. The next morning, Claire returns home, blissfully unaware of the turmoil that has unfolded in her absence. Jamie forces a smile, masking the turmoil within him, desperate for her to notice the changes in their household dynamics. But as Richard stands beside her, a proud smile on his face, Jamie feels the walls closing in around him. As the days turn into weeks, Jamie finds himself caught in a relentless cycle of fear and confusion. Richard's possessive behavior intensifies, suffocating the once vibrant spirit of the young femboy. Though Jamie desperately tries to resist Richard's advances, he feels an inexplicable pull towards his stepfather, torn between repulsion and a confusing sense of belonging. One evening, Claire is scheduled to work late, leaving Richard and Jamie alone at home. Jamie feels a knot of anxiety in his stomach as Richard sets the stage for another intimate encounter. The house is eerily quiet, amplifying the tension in the air. Jamie sits on the edge of the couch, his heart racing, while Richard pours 2 glasses of wine, a smile playing on his lips. "Come on, Jamie. It's just us. Let's relax a little," Richard says, handing Jamie a glass, his fingers lingering on Jamie's hand just a moment too long. Jamie forces a smile, feeling the weight of Richard's gaze on him. "I don't know if I should," he trails off, but Richard leans in, his voice low and soothing. "Just a little taste. I promise it'll help you unwind. We need to talk about us," he insists, the implication heavy in the air. Jamie takes a tentative sip, the alcohol burning his throat as he feels the warmth of Richard's body beside him. As the wine flows, Richard begins to loosen up, his laughter filling the room. He places a hand on Jamie's knee, his touch sending shockwaves through Jamie's body. "You're so beautiful, you know that?" he says, leaning closer. "I don't want you to hide who you are. Not from me." Jamie can feel the heat radiating from Richard, a mixture of fear and unexpected thrill coursing through him. Despite his best intentions to resist, something in Richard's gaze pulls him closer, enticing him to surrender. I don't know what you want from me," Jamie replies, his voice barely above a whisper. Richard inches closer, his breath warm against Jamie's cheek. "I want to help you explore who you really are. Just let go, Jamie." With that, Richard leans in and captures Jamie's lips with his own, a mix of passion and desperation igniting between them. For a brief moment, Jamie is frozen, his mind racing with a swirl of emotions. The kiss is electric, awakening something deep within him. He has fought against this connection, yet here it is, undeniable and consuming. Surrendering to the moment, Jamie kisses Richard back, feeling the boundaries of his identity blur as their lips move in a desperate dance. But just as quickly as the heat ignites, Jamie's mind catches up with his body. Panic surges through him, and he pushes Richard away, breathing heavily. "No, this isn't right," he gasps, his heart pounding in his chest as he backs away. Richard's expression darkens, a mix of desire and frustration flashing across his face. "Why are you fighting this? We can be so good together, Jamie. You know it," he insists, stepping closer, his hand grasping Jamie's wrist in a firm grip. "I'm not your toy," Jamie protests, pulling away, but Richard's hold is relentless. "You're so much more than that," Richard murmurs, his voice a sultry whisper. "You're mine." Over the next few days, Jamie tries to maintain distance, but Richard finds ways to draw him back into his orbit. A casual touch here, a lingering gaze there. Jamie struggles to keep his composure, but the more Richard pushes, the more he finds himself wavering. The confusion becomes unbearable. He feels trapped in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. One Saturday afternoon, while Claire is out grocery shopping, Richard invites Jamie to join him in the basement for a private movie marathon. Jamie hesitates, but eventually agrees, driven by a strange mix of curiosity and dread. The basement is dimly lit, filled with the smell of popcorn and the faint sound of a movie playing in the background. As they settle onto the couch, Richard's arm drapes over Jamie's shoulders, pulling him close. "Isn't this nice?" Richard asks, his breath tickling Jamie's ear. "Just us, no one else." Jamie's heart races as he fights against the feeling of comfort that creeps in. As the movie plays on, Jamie can feel Richard's hand inching down his arm, fingers dancing over his skin. "You really should let go, Jamie," Richard whispers, his lips brushing against Jamie's neck. The sensation sends shivers down Jamie's spine, a rush of conflicting feelings flooding his mind. He wants to push Richard away, but something inside him craves the attention. "Stop it, Richard," Jamie warns, but his voice is shaky, betraying the turmoil within. "This isn't right." Richard pulls back, his gaze piercing. "What's right is what you feel. Embrace it." With that, he captures Jamie's lips again, and this time Jamie surrenders completely, lost in the moment. As their bodies entwine, Jamie feels an intoxicating rush of desire, drowning out the voice of reason in his mind. The lines blur further as Richard's hands explore Jamie's body, tracing his curves with a practiced tenderness. "You're perfect," Richard murmurs against Jamie's lips, pulling him deeper into the kiss. Jamie's mind races, a storm of confusion and exhilaration battling within him. He feels alive, but at what cost? Just as Jamie begins to let go of his inhibitions, a sudden noise interrupts the moment. Claire's car pulls into the driveway. Panic surges through Jamie as he quickly breaks the kiss, scrambling to create distance between them. Richard, too, reacts swiftly, his expression shifting to one of annoyance as they both pull apart. "Don't let her ruin this for us," Richard warns, the urgency in his voice palpable. Jamie's heart races as he tries to gather himself, guilt flooding through him. He knows he shouldn't be here, yet the thrill of being desired is intoxicating. As Claire enters the house, Jamie and Richard put on their best innocent faces, the tension thick in the air. "Hey, you two, watching a movie?" Claire asks, her eyes flicking between them with a hint of suspicion. Jamie forces a smile, but inside, he feels like he's living a lie. "Just hanging out, Mom," Richard replies, too casually for Jamie's comfort. As Claire sets down the groceries, Jamie silently begs for the ground to swallow him whole. The weight of their secret is suffocating, and the fear of discovery looms over him like a dark cloud. That night, as Jamie lies in bed, he reflects on the whirlwind of emotions that have consumed him. He feels trapped in a dangerous game, the stakes higher than he ever imagined. Richard's possessive touch, once thrilling, now feels like a chain, binding him to a reality he desperately wants to escape. Yet as he closes his eyes, he can't shake the memory of Richard's lips on his, the intoxicating feeling of surrender lingering in the shadows of his mind. Days turn into weeks, and Jamie finds himself oscillating between fear and desire, caught in a web of manipulation that Richard expertly spins around him. He tries to distance himself, but the allure of Richard's attention pulls him back, deeper into the chaos of their relationship. The lines between love, obsession and betrayal blur, leaving Jamie trapped in a spiral of confusion and dread. One fateful evening, the tension reaches its breaking point. After another emotionally charged encounter, Jamie stands at the edge of a precipice, torn between the life he knows and the dangerous allure of his stepfather. In a moment of desperation, he reaches out to Richard, driven by a conflicting sense of loyalty and fear. "Help me understand what we are," Jamie pleads, his voice trembling. Richard's eyes spark with a twisted sense of victory, as if he has been waiting for this moment. "We're more than family, Jamie. We're meant to be together. Just let go and trust me." With those words, Jamie feels himself teetering on the edge, the darkness beckoning him closer. The nights grew heavier with tension, as Jamie found himself trapped in a world where desire and dread coalesced into an unbearable reality. Each stolen moment with Richard felt like a dangerous game, and with every touch, Jamie wrestled with the implications of their forbidden connection. Yet, despite the guilt gnawing at his conscience, the intoxicating pull of Richard's affection made it nearly impossible to break free. But the illusion began to crumble when Claire, growing increasingly suspicious, noticed the subtle changes in Jamie's demeanor. She could sense the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating their once peaceful home. Jamie became more withdrawn, his laughter less frequent, replaced with nervous glances and a lingering guilt that twisted in his stomach. One evening, while Jamie was in his room, Claire decided to take matters into her own hands. She rummaged through Jamie's things, driven by a mother's instinct to protect her son from whatever darkness had crept into his life. That's when she discovered a hidden box filled with letters and messages. Some from Richard, others written by Jamie himself. The contents made her blood run cold. In her gut, Claire felt a storm brewing. A chilling realization hit her. The depth of Richard's influence over Jamie was far darker than she had anticipated. Her heart raced as she pieced together the puzzle, and rage bubbled within her as she recalled the fleeting moments when she'd brushed off the signs. She could no longer ignore the truth. Claire confronted Richard that night, her voice shaking with fury. "What have you done to my son?" she spat, her eyes blazing. Richard feigned innocence, a mask of calm that only infuriated Claire further. "I haven't done anything, Claire." "You're overreacting," he replied smoothly, but the tension in the room was palpable. But Claire wasn't convinced. "I found the letters, Richard. You've twisted Jamie into your game, and I won't let you hurt him anymore." Her voice quivered with raw emotion. Richard's demeanor shifted. His facade crumbled, revealing the sinister truth lurking beneath. "Jamie wants this, Claire. He craves my attention. He just doesn't know it yet. You're the one pushing him away," he retorted, his tone darkening, revealing the possessive beast he had become. "Stay out of our relationship. This is between me and Jamie." The confrontation escalated, both of them locked in a battle of wills that threatened to expose the deeply buried secrets of their twisted family dynamic. Claire's protective instincts roared to life, and in that moment she felt a primal urge to protect her son at all costs. With newfound determination, Claire confronted Jamie when he returned home later that night, her heart racing as she prepared for the inevitable fallout. "We need to talk, Jamie," she said, her voice steady yet filled with urgency. "What's wrong, Mom?" Jamie replied, anxiety creeping into his voice as he sat down, unaware of the storm brewing in his mother's heart. "Richard is manipulating you," Claire began, her voice filled with conviction. "I found your letters. I know what's been going on between you two." Jamie's face paled as his mother's words pierced through the fog of his emotions. "It's not what you think, Mom," he protested weakly, desperation lacing his tone. "Not what I think. Jamie, this isn't love. This is sick." Claire's voice rose, the frustration boiling over as she tried to reach her son. "You need to see this for what it is. You're not safe with him." But Jamie was too far gone, torn between loyalty and the fear of losing Richard. "You don't understand. He loves me," he shouted, tears brimming in his eyes. "He's the only one who gets me." Claire felt her heart shatter at the sight of her son's pain. "Jamie, please. I can't lose you to him," she begged, desperation coating her voice. The fear of losing her son to a man who twisted love into something unrecognizable was a nightmare she couldn't bear. But Jamie, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions, pushed his mother away. "I need to be with him. You don't know what it's like," he screamed, fleeing to his room, slamming the door behind him. Claire's heart raced as she realized the urgency of the situation. She could no longer stand idly by. She had to take matters into her own hands. In a fit of rage, she stormed downstairs, her mind racing as she made a plan to confront Richard once and for all. As Claire approached Richard's room, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. She banged on the door, her fists clenched, ready to face the man she now saw as a monster. "Richard, open this door. We need to talk." Richard opened the door with an air of arrogance, a smirk playing on his lips. "What's the matter, Claire? You finally realize Jamie belongs with me?" Before he could react, Claire lunged forward, shoving him aside and storming into the room. The sight of Jamie's personal items, mixed with remnants of their twisted relationship, made her stomach churn. "This ends now!" she shouted, her voice cracking with fury. "Get out, Claire! You're ruining everything!" Richard yelled, his anger boiling over. But Claire stood her ground, her determination unwavering. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my son from you," she spat, her voice filled with resolve. In a moment of pure rage, Richard grabbed a nearby object, a knife from his desk, his eyes glinting with a dangerous intensity. "You think you can take him from me? You have no idea what I'm capable of." The tension escalated, and in a tragic turn of events, Claire lunged forward, a desperate attempt to wrest the knife from Richard's grasp. In the chaos, the knife glinted ominously, and before anyone could react, a scream pierced the air. Jamie, drawn by the commotion, burst into the room just in time to see the horror unfold. The struggle between Claire and Richard reached its breaking point as the knife plunged into Jamie's side, a horrific, shocking moment frozen in time. Jamie gasped, disbelief flooding his eyes as he crumpled to the floor. "Mom, what have you done?" he whispered, his voice laced with pain and betrayal. Claire's heart dropped as she realized what had happened. "No, Jamie!" she cried, collapsing beside him, the weight of her actions crashing down around her. "I didn't mean to. I was trying to protect you." But it was too late. Jamie lay there, the life fading from his eyes, a tragic casualty of a world filled with confusion and darkness. Richard, too, was stunned, the knife falling from his hand as he stared in disbelief. "What have you done?" he echoed, his voice hollow, the reality of the moment sinking in. As the sirens wailed in the distance, the gravity of the situation became painfully clear. Claire's world shattered around her, the weight of her choices crashing down like a tidal wave. Jamie was gone, the love she had fought to protect now lost to a senseless tragedy. In the aftermath, The court proceedings revealed the harrowing truth of the events that transpired that night. Claire, charged with manslaughter, faced a judge who recognized the deep psychological scars that had plagued their family. Though her actions were unforgivable, there was a glimmer of understanding that perhaps this was a tragic consequence of love, twisted into something monstrous. The jury ultimately sentenced Claire to 15 years in prison, a long time to reflect on the choices that led to the heartbreaking end of her son's life.